Flatfish are abundant, delicious and fun to hunt. The Isle of Anglesey in North Wales holds some absolute beasts, and late May is the perfect time to go there. It's a beautiful place, great scenery, and of course plenty of fish. Truly superb place to go. Now, having recently moved to Chester, it's about an hour and a half drive for me to get there, but the roads empty out as you get there, and you get into those little country lanes and you know you're pretty much there. A few of the marks require quite long walk-ins. I quite like the remote marks actually. Very few people go to them and there tend to be a lot more fish. It's a truly stunning place. Now in this video we're talking about hunting flatfish. We're going to talk about a few different species, a few different tactics. Going to look at the ways that flatfish are seen, and I'm going to give quite a lot of tips about how I catch quite a lot of flatfish. You can see some different sorts of terrain here that I'm hunting over. Now we start out in some deeper areas, and you can see a gurnard here. I did shoot a gurnard last year, didn't manage to capture it on film. It tasted really good. This one is far too small, but it's pretty cool just seeing the way they move. You can see here a ray. Now I've spotted this from the surface, about 5 meters up in quite bad fizz. And if you look at this ray here, just to go around to the front of it, look at the way the eyes are spaced apart. This is the best way to spot rays. You can also spot Dover sole and turbot in exactly the same way. See the spacing of those eyes. It's very unnatural seeing two small round dark things spaced in that way. Now you see a lot of dogfish on the sand. I'm not quite sure why they're there. They seem very tame as well, so I assume they don't get hunted by seals. Maybe their skin's so tough that seals don't like them. And you see here another ray. See those eyes just spaced apart? This one's more obvious because of the shape of the wings. And I just dropped down onto it and really enjoy watching that ray swimming around. And they're really magical creatures to see. I've never eaten one. I know some people eat them as skate wings, but I've personally never really had the heart to shoot something that would be so easy to shoot. Do you know what I mean? It's not much of a challenge shooting a ray. This I believe is a blonde ray, but there's also a lot of thornbacks off Anglesey as well. Now, when you're flatfish hunting, it's worth looking at the imprints like this. And if you don't see any imprints within 15 minutes, move on, because the flatfish just aren't there. And you know you're getting good at spotting them when you see the really small ones like this. You can see this about 2 centimeters long. When you can spot these in the sand, you know you're doing well and you're ready to start hunting the better ones. You can see a flounder here, or see if you can see it before I see it. Watch it there just shoot off. And again, another one here just kind of half buried in the sand. If you start seeing these small ones, then it's well worth continuing, because you know the big ones will be here. Now I switched to a single band here and immediately see a nice place. Just look at how the place is just slightly outlined in the sand. Pretty hard to spot, but once you get used to it, not too bad. Now I do love eating plaice. This one's about 40 centimeters, perfect size to bake whole. Now one thing with flatfish is they're very hard to kill. And you can see here I try and stab it where the brain would be with the bass, and it's basically still alive. So I try and stab it in a different part of the head, and despite all of that, it's still alive. Very hard to kill. If you cut the throat and bleed them out, as this one has been here, then they will die eventually. Now I've been finding a lot of plaice living amongst these weeds in quite a strong current. They do seem to like the areas with a lot of weed. Not quite sure why it is. Often they get themselves underneath the weeds, and I'm sure it's so they can ambush sand eels in the current, but it's worth looking out for those areas. Flounder as well, like those weedy areas. Now you can see here I've got a plaice on the spear. I see a flounder down here in a weedy area, and flounder seems to spook much more easily than plaice. Anyway, I get into the side, get this plaice onto the float, and then I go straight back into the current. And it's my goal now to take a flatfish with the knife. Again, long weeds. Now the flounder down here is perfectly hidden underneath the weed, and as I come down, the weed moves to the side and the target becomes obvious. And I take it with the knife. A very satisfying feeling. So overall in this session, took 3 flatfish, saw a lot more that I didn't take. On the way back I got stuck in some horrendous quicksand. This was absolutely disgusting. Ended up crawling over it commando style. This is like being back in Royal Marines basic training. Not enjoyable in the slightest. I hope this never happens to you.
This is like being back in the fucking Marines. Fuck's sake. The fucking quicksand.
But I came out of the water with a superb catch. This is a 68cm bass. And then for my next trip, I headed to some sheltered bays, slightly different kind of area. The viz was exceptional in some of these bays, 10 metres plus. You can see here just how calm it is. Absolutely crystal clear water in the shallows. Now, I swim out quite a long way. I often swim out upwards of 1 kilometre, and I'm doing this to try and hunt turbot. You often see turbot imprints in this very, very deep sand. This is about 12 to 15 metres here, just swimming over flat sand. Very tiring diving, doing this much swimming. And unfortunately didn't see any turbot on this occasion. But I did come across 3 gurnard right next to each other, all too small to shoot. I would like to shoot another one. It did taste pretty good, pretty cool fish to shoot. And you often come across Thornback Rays in the deeps as well, just over barren sand. Like I said earlier, I love rays. They're such cool creatures to dive with. At some point I might take one. If I can think of a really good recipe to cook skate wings with, I'd think about it. Now this is a great example of spotting a flatfish. See how late on you can see this ray. Boom, there it is. See the eye slits? I've seen that through the eye slits. That's the only way that ray was visible. It was completely buried in the sand, and I noticed the unusual spacing. 2 things of the same size, a few centimetres apart. Now, see the flounder towards the top of the screen drifting across the weed. Might have to replay that bit. This is a good example of how to do everything perfectly up until the last moment. So I drift up towards this flounder very slowly, creeping up on it. It's gone to ground and hidden itself behind the rock as it drifted away from me. So in a moment what I'll do, because over some stones, is I load my gun onto the least powerful fin on my spear to prevent my spear getting blunted. And you'll see how I drop down in cover behind this rock. And that's how I get a shallower angle on the shot, so it doesn't blunt my spear too much. However, my spear is really blunt anyway from shooting rocks while stalking bass in the shallows. And I drop down and basically have an absolute nightmare really. The spear literally hits the flounder and just bounces off, doesn't take it at all, and the flounder just swims off unscathed. So it's a good example of why you should always look after your kit and sharpen your spear. There you go, everything perfect until the shot. I switched venues for an afternoon dive, heading to an area of shallow sand that I've seen turbot in previously. I saw 3 turbot on a night dive. I got a lot of night dives out the gun to wrecky areas. I'd seen some turbot and I was hopeful of getting one during the day. All the ones I saw on the night dive were too small. And straight away I saw a flounder. This is always a really good sign. And again, a weedy area, and spooked another flounder. So when you start seeing flounder, you generally tend to see plaice, like this one here. I identified this one by the white spots. It's on flat sand. If it had been swimming, or if it had been sat a metre further forward on the pebbled sand, I might not have seen it, but it was in the wrong place for its camouflage. And this was a nice fish, about 45 centimetres, big enough to fillet. I find that plaice above 45 centimetres are really worth shooting because you get 4 fairly decent fillets off them, and the really big ones you really do get a lot of meat. Now this plaice here is an example of a smaller one. Sometimes it's a bit hard to size up flatfish because you're so close. This is only about 35 to 40 centimetres, okay to bake whole, but I did shoot an absolute beast which I didn't capture on film. This is a 55 centimetre plaice, which is a really big one. I was absolutely chuffed with this. It equalled my PB from last year, and this one gave me 4 thick fillets of meat, which from my freezer now I'm going to coat them in breadcrumbs and fry them whole and have some nice lemon juice and maybe some tartar sauce. So this was a superb session. Got 2 bass as well. The biggest bass was 60 centimetres, closing in on 5 pounds. I will be doing another video about stalking bass in the shallows. We've learned a lot about that. But a really, really good haul of fish. I had to be quite selective with the bass. There are a lot of small bass around, but I shot 2 pretty decent ones. And very, very happy with these flatfish. Absolutely beautiful plaice. Yeah, superb fish right there. Plaice over 50 centimetres is a great fish. Now, in my next video, I'm going to do one of 2 things. I'm either going to talk about stalking bass in the shallows. I've been working a lot on my hunting in the kelp. Or I'm going to talk about diving at night, because because I've started seeing Dover sole and numerous turbot off the Isle of Anglesey. I've had some really cool night dives. See this Dover sole here. I don't know anyone that's actually shot a Dover sole off Anglesey, but I'm determined to get one this summer. So to make sure you see the next video, please do like and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow, helps me out, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Otherwise, enjoy your diving and spearfishing.